highly guarded secret is the probability that German Nazis, as early as the 1930s, have built a secret base at the South Pole. While this idea undoubtedly will strike most people as absurd, there is tantalizing evidence to suggest that something along this line might have some truth to it. Long-standing banking and business connections allowed high-ranking German leaders in 1944 to forge a formidable Nazi-controlled organization for post-war activities. In researching the shape of totalitarian control during this century, I saw that the plans of the Nazis manifestly did not die with the German loss of World War II. The ideology and many of the principal players survived and flourished after the war, and have had a profound impact on post-war history, and on events taking place today. Orvis A. Schmidt, the U.S. Treasury Department's Director of Foreign Funds Control, in 1945 offered this description of a Nazi flight capital program. The network of trade, industrial, and cartel organizations has been streamlined and intermeshed, not only organizationally but also by what has been officially described as personnel union. Legal authority to operate this organizational machinery has been vested in the concerns that have majority capacity in the key industries such as those producing iron and steel, coal and basic chemicals. These concerns have been deliberately welded together by exchanges of stock to the point where a handful of men can make policy and other decisions that affect us all. Could one of those decisions have been the creation of a Nazi base connected to the development of UFOs? While this notion may superficially appear to be sheer nonsense, the public record offers compelling, if incomplete, evidence to support this idea. One theory is that Martin Bormann and other top Nazis escaped to South America and onto a secret base in Antarctica, renamed Neu Schwabenland by the Germans, where they built UFOs so sophisticated that their secret Nazi empire has exerted significant control over world events and governments to this day. Reportedly, German Navy Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz stated in 1943, "The German submarine fleet is proud of having built for the Führer in another part of the world a Shangri-La on land, an impregnable fortress," and it has been reported that U.S. Admiral Richard Byrd, upon his return from an expedition to Antarctica in 1947, stated it was necessary for the USA to take defensive actions against enemy airfighters which come from the polar regions, and that America could be attacked by fighters that are able to fly from one pole to the other with incredible speed. Advancing the idea that the Nazis continually shipped men and material to the South Pole throughout the war years, author R. A. Harbinson wrote, regarding the possibility of the Germans building self-sufficient underground research factories in the Antarctic, it has only to be pointed out that the underground research centers of Nazi Germany were gigantic feats of construction, containing wind tunnels, machine shops, assembly plants, launching pads, supply dumps and accommodation for all who worked there, including adjoining camps for slaves, and yet very few people knew that they existed. But, while tales of a secret Nazi base in Antarctica may appear plausible to some, the idea that a warm water location at the South Pole has remained undiscovered and no one has escaped or deserted the place in more than 50 years stretched belief to the breaking point in years past. But with the new revelations of 60 to 70 degree temperature water, magnetic anomalies suggesting the possibility of a hidden city or base, and the obvious backout taking place concerning current events at the pole, the idea of a secret base is no longer so far-fetched. Rumors began to circulate that whilst Germany had been defeated, a selection of military personnel and scientists had fled the fatherland as Allied troops swept across mainland Europe, and had established themselves at a secret base on the Antarctic continent, from where they continued to develop their advanced aircraft technology. Furthermore, it is interesting to note that at the end of the war, the Allies determined that there were 250,000 Germans unaccounted for, even taking into account casualties and deaths. Could Neu Schwabenland have been a permanently manned German base at that time? The brackish water of the war, 30 degrees, lakes virtually confirmed that all had an outlet to the sea and would thus have been a haven for U-boats. The two ice-free mountain ranges in Neu Schwabenland presented no worse an underground tunneling project for Organisation Todt than anything they had encountered and overcome in Norway. The Germans were the world's experts at building and inhabiting underground metropolis. At the end of the war, the United States gave anything concerning Ordruf a top-secret classification for 100 years upwards. The fact that there had been substantial underground workings there, and Ordruf was the location of the last redoubt, was concealed absolutely. Fortunately for researchers, in 1962 the DDR had taken sworn depositions from all local residents during an investigation of the wartime Ordruf, and upon the reunification of the two Germanys in 1989, these documents became available to all and sundry at Arnstadt Municipal Archive. From the Arnstadt documents it is clear that the Reich unit operated a three-story underground bunker with floor 70 by 20 meters. When working, the device emitted some kind of energy field which shut down all electrical equipment and non-diesel engines within a range of about 8 miles. For this reason, even though Ordruf was crawling with SS, it was never photographed from the air nor bombed. Declassified USAF documents dated early 1945 admit the existence of an unknown energy field over Frankfurt, Maine and other locations which, fantastic though it may appear, were able to interfere with our aircraft engines at 30,000 feet. Ordruf rebuilt below Neu Schwabenland during the last 2 years of the war would not have been difficult, and since Antarctica had the highest priority of anything in the Third Reich, it seems likely that it must have been. Such a base would have been impregnable, for the suggestion is that the force field worked in various ways favorable to the occupants. Scary secrets of the Third Reich's base in Antarctica. A remarkable event occurred in 1999, but only specialists paid adequate attention to it. A research expedition had discovered a virus in Antarctica. At that, neither people nor animals had immunity to the virus. After all, Antarctica is far away. For this very reason the virus cannot be dangerous for the rest of the planet, especially since the dangerous discovery was deep in the permafrost. However, scientists say that against the background of a global warming threatening the Earth, the unknown virus can cause an awful catastrophe on the planet. Expert Tom Starmer from the University of New York also shares the pessimistic forecasts of his colleagues. We don't know what the mankind will face in the South Pole in the nearest time due to the global warming. It is not ruled out that an unbelievable catastrophe may break out. Viruses protected with a protein cover survive even in the permafrost. As soon as the temperature gets warmer they will immediately start reproducing. American scientists treated the Antarctica discovery very seriously and even organized a special expedition that currently tests the ice for unknown viruses in order to develop an antidote in good time. What is the source of the virus in Antarctica where only penguins can survive in the ice? There is no answer to the question. Specialists are at a loss. However, several theories concerning the problem have been put forward. A majority of scientists are inclined to believe that prehistoric forms of life probably survived in the permafrost. But some specialists blame bonzes of the Third Reich for delivery of a secretly developed bacteriological weapon to Antarctica. And this theory arose not in a vacuum. It is known that already in 1938 Nazis suddenly became interested in Antarctica. They organized 2 expeditions to the area in 1938 to 1939. At first, planes of the Third Reich took detailed pictures of unexplored territories and then they dropped several thousands of metal pennons with swastika there. The whole of the explored territory was called Neu Schwabenland and was considered a part of the Third Reich. After the expedition, Captain Richer reported to Field Marshal Göring, "The planes dropped their pennons 25 kilometers apart. We covered the area of about 8.600 thousand square meters. 350,000 square meters of them were photographed." In 1943, Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz dropped a remarkable phrase: "Germany's submarine fleet is proud that it created an unassailable fortress for the Führer on the other end of the world." It highly likely means that Nazis were building a secret base in Antarctica within 1938 to 1943. Submarines were mostly used for transportation of necessary freight to the place. As specialists for the Third Reich wrote, at the end of World War II the submarines were relieved of their torpedo arms in the port of Kiel and then were loaded with containers with different goods. The submarines also received passengers whose faces were hidden behind surgical bands. Wilhelm Bernard was commander of one of the submarines, U-530. The submarine left the port of Kiel on April 13, 1945. When it reached the shores of Antarctica, 16 members from the crew built an ice cave and put boxes into the cave. It was allegedly said that the boxes contained relics of the Third Reich, including Hitler's documents and personal stuff. The operation was code-named Valkyrie 2. When the operation was over on July 10, 1945, the submarine Neu 530 entered the Argentinian port of Mar del Plata and surrendered to the authorities. It is also supposed that another submarine from the formation, U-977, under the command of Heinz Schaefer, delivered the remains of Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun to Neu Schwabenland. It followed the route of the U-530 submarine and called at Antarctica. The submarine arrived in Mar del Plata on August 17, 1945. But the version of Wilhelm Bernard and Heinz Schaefer saying that the submarines delivered relics to the Antarctica shores, both captains told it at the interrogations held by the American and British intelligence services, seems rather dubious. It is unlikely that the serious operation was designed only for the sake of delivery of the Third Reich documents and relics. Later, special services seized a confidential letter of Captain Schaefer to his friend, Captain Wilhelm Bernard, who obviously planned to publish his memoirs. The letter was dated with June 1, 1983. It runs as follows: Dear Willie, I was thinking if it is reasonable to publish your manuscript concerning the U-530. The 3 submarines that took part in that operation, U-977, U-530 and U-465, are currently at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. Isn't it better to leave them there? My old friend, think about it. Think please how then my book will look when you publish your memoirs. After World War II, Heinz Schaefer wrote a book named U-977. We all made an oath to keep the secret. We did nothing wrong. We just obeyed the orders and fought for our loved Germany and its survival. Please think again. Isn't it better to picture everything as a fable? What results do you plan to achieve with your revelations? Think about it, please. Even 40 years after the events, Heinz insisted that Bernard mustn't say the truth. Is it possible that the submarines delivered something more dangerous to the continent, not Hitler's documents? Could it be the bacteriological weapon traces of which were discovered in Antarctica as unknown viruses in the permafrost last year? New Berlin. If you had been a Wehrmacht soldier at the bombed-out railroad station in Poltava, city in the Ukraine, during the summer of 1942, you may have seen a very strange-looking military unit on the march, heading for a waiting passenger train. The unit consisted of women, all of them blonde and blue-eyed, between the ages of 17 and 24, tall and slender, their sensational figures encased in striking sky-blue uniforms. Each woman wore an Italian-style garrison cap, an A-line skirt with a hem below the knee, and a form-fitting jacket with the insignia of the SS. You might have thought the SS had recruited a platoon of high-class call girls, but the truth was far stranger than that. You would have been looking at Reichsfuhrer SS Heinrich Himmler's latest brainstorm, the Antarktische Antarctic Settlement Women or ASF. The story actually begins in 1938. When the German seaplane carrier Schwabenland sailed across the South Atlantic, bound for Queen Maud's Land in Antarctica. According to Russian ufologist Konstantin Ivanenko, the Schwabenland sailed to Antarctica, commanded by Albert Richter, a veteran of cold weather operations. The Richter expedition's scientists used their large Dornier seaplanes to explore the polar wastes, emulating Admiral Richard E. Byrd's efforts a decade earlier. The German scientists discovered ice-free lakes, heated by underground volcanic features, and were able to land on them. It is widely believed that the Schwabenland's expedition was aimed at scouting out a secret base of operations. A German base was established in the Mullig-Hoffmann Mountains, just inland from the Princess Astrid coast. The area was renamed Neu Schwabenland, New Swabia, and the base was known only as Station 211. From the movie Schindler's List, people have gotten the idea that killing Jews was the Nazis' main concern. But in actual fact, Hitler and the SS were just as ruthless with the rest of the population in their Eastern European empire, thinking nothing of shuffling large numbers of people around in their quest for a more perfect Aryan race. This shuffle was accomplished by a little-known office of the SS called the Ras- und Siedlungsamt, German for Race and Settlement Bureau, or RUSHA. In the Ukraine alone, RUSHA drafted 500,000 women for forced labor in the munitions factories of Nazi Germany. It was RUSHA which selected women for Himmler's unit of Antarctic Siedlungsfrauen, Antarctic settlement women. About half of the recruits were Volksdeutsche ethnic Germans whose ancestors had settled in the Ukraine in the 17th and 18th centuries. The others were native Ukrainians whom RUSHA had upgraded to full Aryans. This process was called Umjuchung, Germanization. According to Ivanenko, there is increased popularity for the idea of a German Slavonic Antarctic Reich. It is said that 10,000 of the racially most pure Ukrainians, out of 500,000 deported in 1942 by Martin Bormann, were transported to the German Antarctic bases during World War II, in the proportion of 4 Ukrainian women to 1 German man. If true, this would mean that Himmler transferred 2,500 Waffen-SS soldiers, who had proven themselves in combat on the Russian front, to Station 211, now Neu Schwabenland, in Antarctica. This may be the source of the myth of the last SS battalion. An ASF training camp was set up in Estonia, on a peninsula near Rystena on Hiiumaa Island in the Baltic Sea. It was a combination finishing school and boot camp, where the ladies took lessons in charm and housekeeping along with their courses in polar survival. Himmler kept the camp's existence a closely guarded secret. For unhappy campers, the only escape consisted of a one-way train ticket to Auschwitz. There is one known instance of an ASF deserter. In 1943, Auschwitz guard Irma Gries, 22, the off-and-on girlfriend of Drive Joseph Mengele, took to wearing a sky blue ASF uniform, which she had scavenged from a pile of inmate clothing. Gries was hanged in 1946 for war crimes. The uniform's original owner must have had serious second thoughts about a permanent move to Antarctica. The failure of Gross Admiral Karl Dunitz's U-boat offensive by May 1943 freed up dozens of milk cow U-boats. These were large submarines, almost as big as tramp steamers, which Dönitz had used to supply his U-boat wolf packs in remote seas of the world. Himmler now put them to work carting supplies and personnel to Antarctica. Himmler's rationale for sending thousands of settlers to Antarctica can only be understood within the context of his mystic beliefs. As a result of his youthful reading of New Age books, his association with the occultist Drive Friedrich Whittle, and his membership in the Ardaman, Himmler became a believer in the Hindu concept of world ages or yugas. He believed that the current age, or Kali Yuga, would end in a global cataclysm, thereby giving birth to a new world age called the Satya Yuga. By sending a Nazi colony to Antarctica, Himmler was ensuring that a remnant of the pure Aryan race would survive the coming cataclysm with its society and culture intact. They would then take possession of Antarctica when the cataclysm melted the South Polar ice cap. According to believers, the Neu Schwabenland colony survived not only the end of World War II, but a full-on battle with the 3,500 Marines and aircraft of Operation High Jump. In 2003 Ivanenko wrote, "The total population of Nazis in Antarctica now exceeds 2 million and that many of them have undergone plastic surgery in order to move about with greater ease through South America and conduct all manner of business transactions." He called the Antarctic Reich one of the most militarily powerful states in the world because it can destroy the USA several times over with its submarine-based nuclear missiles, remaining itself invulnerable to U.S. nuclear strikes because of the 2-mile-thick ice shield. Further, he claims that the city of Neu Berlin, the colony's capital, sprawls through narrow subglacial tunnels under an unnamed mountain range, heated by volcanic vents. The ufologist also makes the claim that Neu Berlin adjoins the prehistoric ruins of Kadath, which may have been built by settlers from the lost continent of Atlantis well over 100,000 years ago. Still other fringe researchers claim that the actual ruins of Atlantis have been found, and possibly reoccupied, under the Antarctic ice. Some say that Atlantis is located near one of the 70 or so warm water lakes that have been discovered miles beneath the polar ice sheet, such as Lake Vostok near the Russian base at the Pole of Inaccessibility. Another of the oft-made claims about New Berlin is that the city has an alien quarter, where Pleiadians, Zeta Reticulans, Reptoids, Men in Black, Aldebarani and other visitors from the stars dwell. As we have seen, the Nazis were working on some very advanced aircraft, some of which may have been capable of leaving the Earth's atmosphere. Some researchers are convinced that the Nazis did indeed make it to the Moon, and even Mars. Could they have made contact with space aliens once they left the Earth? Or, could their rockets, Foo Fighters and disc aircraft have attracted aliens to visit them? A claim floats around in modern UFO lore that an extraterrestrial craft with anti-gravity propulsion crashed in the Schwarzwald in the summer 1936, and was recovered by the Nazis who back-engineered it, thus explaining their flying saucer program. This parallels stories of a similarly recovered crashed saucer near Roswell, New Mexico in 1947, the American back-engineering of which supposedly led to the discovery of the transistor, patented by Bell Laboratories the following year, fiber optics and other exotic technologies. Ivanenko reported that talk about the Antarctic Reich is becoming more and more popular in Russia, Poland, the Ukraine, Belarus and other countries in Eastern Europe. He writes, in the May 10, 2003 issue of the newspaper, Frankfurter Allgemeine, Polish journalist A. Stagjuk criticized Poland's decision to send troops to Iraq to assist with the Allied occupation. At the end, he said, the next Polish government will sign a treaty with Antarctica and declare war on the USA. Ivanenko added that Stagjuk's words were broadcast on the shortwave radio station Deutsche Welle the same week. Some analysts compared this sentence to famous code phrases which started wars in the 20th century, such as over all of Spain, the sky is cloudless in 1936, and climb Mount Nitaka in 1941. Climb Mount Nitaka was the signal Admiral Yamamoto sent to Kido Butai, the Imperial Japanese Navy's fleet, to begin the attack on Pearl Harbor. It is strange to think of a large population living under the ice of Antarctica, totally divorced from the mainstream world. Then again, there are hetero-indigenous people living on Lago de Yanayaku Lake, less than 50 kilometers, 30 miles, east of Iquitos, Peru, who have never heard of Courtney Love. So, is there a city under the ice inhabited by the grandchildren and great-grandchildren of the original SS settlers? Or is it just an urban legend stemming from the chaotic conditions that prevailed in Europe during World War II? Someday we may know for certain.